Hey guys, tonight we drift back to when there wasn't really a back to go to. There's no sky yet, no sea, not even a place to stand. Just darkness, silence, and a sort of cosmic soup that feels like it's thinking about existing but hasn't made up its mind yet. You hang there in that weightless void, feeling the hush of something ancient and expectant pressing around you. This is chaos, not chaos as in messy bedrooms or lost socks, but the original gap, the yawning emptiness before anything had a name. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, comment your location and local time. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drift through chaos, and like bubbles rising through a thick, dark stew, shapes begin to form. First, there's Gaia, the earth, solid, fertile, and patient. Then Tartarus, a deep pit far below everything else, the kind of place you drop your worst mistakes into. After that comes Eros, the first glimmer of desire, not quite love, more like the spark that makes atoms decide to hold hands. Then Erebus and Nyx, darkness and night, coil together like ink spreading through water. It's not exactly a family tree yet, more like a family puddle. From Nyx and Erebus come Hemera, day, and Ether, the bright upper air. Historians still argue whether these early gods were meant to be literal beings or symbolic forces. Was night really a goddess with a personality, or just a poetic way to explain, well, night? The line between theology and metaphor in early Greek thought is blurrier than your vision after 2 nights of no sleep. Still, everything feels alive. You can sense the universe stretching, yawning awake, shaking off its primordial nap. Gaia starts shaping herself, mountains ripple up like goosebumps, rivers carve sleepy paths, and from her surface, green tendrils whisper into being. She's the mother of everything, though she never really asked for the job. There's no HR department in prehistory, so she just rolls with it. Soon, Gaia gives birth to Uranus, the sky. He's vast and glittering, wrapping himself around her like a celestial blanket. The two are inseparable, literally. They produce the Titans, massive beings of unfathomable power who represent natural forces, Oceanus the endless river, Hyperion the light of the heavens. Themis the spirit of order, and others with names that sound like metal bands and philosophy professors at once, but then things start to get awkward. Uranus, perhaps a bit of a control freak, refuses to let his children leave Gaia's body. They're trapped inside her, rumbling and crying out. It's not exactly a healthy relationship dynamic. Gaia, exhausted and furious, fashions a great sickle from flint, ancient myths version of We Need to Talk. She finds her boldest son, Cronus, and whispers her plan. When Uranus comes to lie with her again, Cronus strikes. The sickle flashes, the sky groans, and suddenly the heavens and earth are separated forever. A mainstream historical fact here, ancient Greek storytellers often used these family feuds to explain physical phenomena. The separation of earth and sky mirrors how the Greeks imagined their world's beginning, divine acts as geological events, from Uranus's spilled blood, because, of course, there's symbolic blood, spring the Erinyes, Furies, the giants, and even the first ash tree nymphs. Then, as his severed essence hits the sea, foam gathers, and from it rises a figure that will later cause much delightful chaos, Aphrodite, goddess of love. Not bad for an accidental side effect. And just like that, the universe has momentum. Order and separation define it now. The ancient poet Hesiod described this process like watching a craftsman at work, things taking shape, being named, being divided into sky, sea, and land. You can almost hear the clink of reality settling into place, a quirky tidbit. Some later philosophers believed chaos was not a void but a substance, an infinite mist filled with potential, like a cosmic sourdough starter. It's strangely comforting to think that everything, stars, gods, you, rose out of something so humble and stretchy. You drift above this new cosmos. The air shimmers with possibility, and for the first time, you can sense time. Slow, syrupy, and immense. Maybe you imagine how mortals will one day try to measure it, scratching lines into bone or counting moons, never realizing that time itself, Chronos, is already slithering quietly through the fabric of the newborn world. Down below, Gaia watches her children grow restless. The Titans are powerful but flawed, like gifted kids without supervision. And while the stars wink into being overhead, the stage is being quietly set for more divine dysfunction. You can already feel it coming, like distant thunder before a storm, but for now, the world is calm. Mountains rest, oceans breathe, and night stretches gently across the curve of the sky. You drift there for a moment. Weightless between beginnings, as the first gods learn what it means simply to be, you drift down toward Gaia again. She's not glowing with joy anymore. The Earth Mother has birthed mountains, seas, and titans, but her divine children are trouble. The ground hums beneath your feet, not from quakes but from family tension. Imagine raising 12 mountain-sized toddlers, each sure they're right. Gaia's offspring aren't just big, they are nature. Oceanus coils around the world, Hyperion burns with pride, Theia shines, Mnemosyne holds every memory. Cronus, the youngest, watches with quiet cunning. Rhea is serene and sharp, Iapetus sounds like trouble. Together, they form the first ruling order, the Titans, but not all her children are poetic metaphors. Gaia also bears the Cyclopes, giant smiths with one glaring eye, and the Centimanes, walking natural disasters with 50 heads, 100 arms, and bad tempers. Uranus takes one look and says, absolutely not, then shoves them into Tartarus, the dark pit at existence's edge. Gaia winces as their weight presses inside her. A grudge she won't forget, she pleads with Uranus, but he hovers smugly above. So Gaia whispers to her Titan sons, one of you must set me free. The Titans hesitate, except Cronus. With a flint sickle forged by his mother, he ambushes Uranus, cutting sky from earth. Liberation and patricide in one stroke. Many early myths mirror this, Sky Father, Earth Mother, and the moment they're torn apart, as Uranus fades, he curses his children, one day Cronus will fall by his own son. From his blood, the Furies and giants are born, hissing through the cosmos. Cronus becomes king, ushering in the Golden Age, no war, no hunger, no taxes. Fields grow by themselves, weather stays gentle. Paradise. But Cronus keeps glancing over his shoulder, paranoia runs in the family. Remembering his father's curse, Cronus swallows each newborn, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. Rhea finally flees to Crete, hides in a cave, and gives birth to Zeus. She tricks Cronus with a rock in swaddling cloth. He swallows it without question. Zeus grows in secret, nursed by the goat Amalthea, guarded by the Cuorides who clash their shields to mask his cries. Some myths say his cradle hung from a tree, belonging to neither sky, earth, nor sea, just in case Cronus came searching. Meanwhile, Cronus rules unaware as rebellion brews. Titan power is vast, but time, his namesake, never stops. Some scholars think Cronus and time were once the same figure. Either way, both devour their children eventually. In this mythic world, nature and gods are inseparable. Wind whispers, mountains grumble, storms are family quarrels overhead. And Gaia watches, older, quieter, her body lush but scarred, something stirs again. In that cave, lightning flickers at a baby's fingertips. Zeus isn't just another god, he's the next revolution. In Greek myth, family tradition means never learning from your ancestors' mistakes. You linger in the twilight between ages, where Cronus reigns and paranoia hums in the golden air. The world beneath him is beautiful but fragile, as if it knows peace built on fear won't last. Mortals till the land without worry, gods hum softly, but somewhere below, metal clinks, a prophecy awakening, Cronus sits on his throne of cosmic bone, sickle across his knees, muttering his grim count, 1 swallowed, 2, 3. And yet something feels hollow. His golden age is already trembling, Rhea hides her tension, waiting. Meanwhile, Zeus, now a thunder-charged teenager, trains in Crete, hurling lightning at trees. Eventually, Gaia whispers the truth: Cronus devoured his siblings to keep power. Zeus doesn't flinch. Disguised as a cupbearer, he infiltrates Mount Olympus, Cronus's stronghold. Metissa's cunning potion mixes with nectar. Cronus drinks, and the earth shakes. One by one, the swallowed gods burst out: Hestia calm, Hera ambitious, Demeter radiant, Hades shadowed, Poseidon roaring. A family reunion no one wanted but destiny demanded. Zeus stands before them, lightning in hand. Enough, he declares, and the word ripples through the world. Cronus roars as the Titans rise, a mountain range of fury. The Titanomachy begins, 10 years of war shaking the edges of existence. Titans fight from Olympus, Olympians from Olympus. Then Zeus makes his move. He frees the Cyclopes and Centimanes. The Cyclopes forge divine weapons: Zeus's thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, Hades' helm. The 100-handed giants hurl boulders like storm hail. One by one, the Titans fall. Most are cast into Tartarus, their screams echoing below. Only Prometheus and Epimetheus are spared, the bridge to mortals. When the dust clears, Zeus claims the sky, Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld. The cosmos is divided like an inheritance. Rhea exhales at last. Yet Zeus inherits more than power, he inherits the curse: one of his children will overthrow him. Thunder murmurs with distant guilt. Some myths say the Titans were sealed behind bronze gates guarded by monstrous hounds. Echoes that would shape later visions of hell. Above Olympus, the air smells of ozone and ambrosia. The new gods laugh, feast, argue, divine business as usual. But below, mortals stir, fates whisper, and even thunder can't silence what's coming. The golden age has ended. The age of the Olympians begins, bright, beautiful, already cracking. In the world of gods, nothing stays quiet for long. You drift through pale mist over Crete, the island that once hid a crying baby while his father swallowed stones. That baby is Zeus, and he's never been humble. Power hums around him, that mix of charm, recklessness, and authority mortals will one day worship and fear. The war with the Titans is over. Zeus now rules the cosmos from Mount Olympus, where clouds swirl beneath golden halls. But victory brings weight, rivers run thick with ash, mountains sag, and the land hums with the Titanomachy's echoes. Zeus quickly learns the hardest part isn't winning power, it's holding it. He begins with diplomacy and thunderbolts. Loyal Titans' descendants are spared, Cyclopes become blacksmiths, and divine roles are set. Poseidon rules the sea, Hades the underworld, Hera becomes queen, and others govern their domains. It's a divine administration, part court, part city-state, but prophecy still whispers: one of Zeus's children will overthrow him. When Metis, the Titaness of wisdom, becomes pregnant, fear overrides love. Zeus swallows her whole, trying to outweak fate. Time passes. Pain splits his skull, and Athena bursts forth, armored, brilliant, fully grown. Whether symbol or spectacle, it cements Zeus's power. Soon, more gods fill Olympus: Hephaestus the craftsman, Ares the warrior, Apollo and Artemis, Hermes the trickster, Dionysus the reveler. Each brings light, chaos, and new stories. Olympus buzzes. Hera demands fidelity Zeus won't give. Apollo plays the lyre. Hermes steals for fun. Ares and Athena argue over war. Across Greece, cults adapt these gods to local ideals. Athens hails Athena, Sparta honors Ares. Meanwhile, Zeus expands his romantic conquests: Europa, Io, Leda. Each tale adds children and complications. Heroes, demigods, and minor deities crowd Olympus like an ever-growing court, but beneath the laughter, Zeus still senses the titans in their prison. Gaia stirs, whispering of Typhon, a storm not yet born but inevitable. For now, Olympus gleams, gods toast their endless reign. Yet perfection in myth never lasts. You lean back, listening to distant thunder over Olympus, a reminder that every ruler eventually faces their reckoning. And Zeus, for all his brilliance, is no exception. Olympus gleams in new dawn, golden light spilling across marble columns. You drift upward through cool mist as divine music blends with bureaucratic chatter. The gods have officially opened for business. Every immortal has a domain. Zeus presides from the highest throne, lightning idly dancing on his fingers. Hera sits nearby, regal and stormy. Poseidon drops in with sea salt in his hair. Hades stays below, sending ghostly messages. Olympus feels less like a temple and more like a family business that never quite separates work from life. Hermes darts through halls with scrolls and stolen olives. Athena and Apollo bicker over temple funding. Ares sharpens unnecessary weapons. Zeus listens to prayers, flirts with clouds, tosses the occasional thunderbolt to remind everyone who's boss. Temples, of course, weren't really marble palaces yet. Olympus was more poetic hierarchy than physical space. But beneath the shine, tension simmers. Hera grows weary of Zeus's infidelities. When she catches him, say, with Io turned into a cow, her vengeance becomes legend. The gadfly, eternal torment, Hephaestus, born of Hera alone, is cast out for his twisted leg but forges his way back, crafting wonders so magnificent even Zeus yields. His forge becomes Olympus's blazing heart. Aphrodite strolls by, radiant and dangerous, leaving perfume and chaos in her wake. Apollo tunes his golden lyre, his melodies threading through the halls. His name will echo from Delphi to every corner of Greece. Artemis, his silent twin, prefers the forest's calm, wrapped in silver moonlight, a reminder that freedom has teeth. That night, the gods feast. Ambrosia flows, laughter rings, stars lean close to listen. Yet under the revelry, Zeus's lightning hums too sharply, Hera's eyes flash cold, and below, mortals begin to dream of their makers, half in awe, half in suspicion. Some historians see these myths as mirrors of human nature, others as metaphors for political order, the thunderbolt as power, the hearth as law. Perhaps both. As the feast ends, Hermes reads mortal prayers like messages in a divine inbox. Rain in Athens. Mercy in Crete. Better biceps god in Sparta. Zeus sighs, tell him to pray to Ares. You drift back, watching Olympus like a stage, gods laughing, arguing, feasting, chaotic harmony at its peak. Below, mortals whisper their names into the dark. Empires will rise and fall, myths will shift, but for now Olympus stands bright and untouchable. The heavens are open for business, and every thunderbolt keeps the lights on. Time, even for gods, has its rhythms. Seasons pass across the mortal world in festivals, sacrifices, and songs that rise like smoke toward Olympus. But in the immortal halls, years slip by like sunlight through mist. You drift between ages as myth begins to weave into history, threads of gold and blood. Below, mortals grow ambitious. Once content with small shrines, they now build marble temples that echo with hymns. Columns rise like declarations of faith. At Delphi, pilgrims climb the mountain to seek Apollo's oracle. At Eleusis, initiates honor Demeter and Persephone. Tribal rites of the Bronze Age become structured religion, sacred, ritualized, and often profitable. The gods notice. Zeus leans over the clouds, beard sparking. They're doing well for themselves. Hera replies coolly, until they forget who built their stories. But mortals rarely forget. They reinterpret. At Delphi, a priestess murmurs know thyself, her words echoing through centuries as kings and philosophers seek her riddles. Hermes sorts prayers like mail. 100 goats for a better olive harvest, he reports. That's an investment, Apollo quips, Greek civilization flourishes. From Mycenae to Athens, cities align themselves with gods, Athena for wisdom, Poseidon for power, Artemis for wild grace. Myths multiply, Zeus seduces in disguise, Athena guides heroes, Dionysus births wine and chaos. Historians later trace how local spirits became Olympian deities, how foreign echoes shaped Greek myth. The Greeks didn't erase old gods, they rebranded them. Meanwhile, Olympus hums with drama. Ares storms in, furious. Why do mortals praise Athena for war? Because she wins, says Apollo, unbothered. Aphrodite ignites hearts and scandals, caught with Ares in Hephaestus's golden net, proof even gods can't escape desire. Demeter's grief shapes the seasons. When Persephone is taken to the underworld, crops die. When she returns, spring blooms. Zeus brokers the compromise, half the year above, half below. Even the divine lives by cycles. At night, constellations hum with myth, Orion the hunter. Andromeda saved, Callisto the bear. The Greeks turn the sky into their diary, each star a story. In Athens, mortals experiment with democracy beneath Athena's gaze. The Parthenon gleams, a marriage of geometry and faith. They're getting clever, says Zeus. Hera frowns. Mortals are beginning to question, to reason, no longer just worship, but Olympus still reigns. Festivals and games fill the calendar. Oracles, sacrifices, theater, divine and mortal in a delicate dance, you can almost sense the beginning of the end. Philosophers, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, will soon dissect Olympus like an argument. Yet even they will speak in its language. Myths don't die. They evolve, high above. Apollo finishes his song. They're learning to think, he murmurs. Zeus watches the world, lightning curling through his fingers. Maybe, he says. But it's beautiful. You look down once more at a world glittering with temples, thought, and defiance. The gods still rule, but history is already stirring. The air feels heavier now, scented with iron and olive smoke. You drift toward a battlefield, shields glinting beneath the sun, dust rising like incense. The gods of war have arrived, each whispering into mortal ears, their rival philosophies clashing before a single spear strikes. Athena appears first, calm and radiant, her gray eyes sharp as logic. She moves among soldiers, armor polished, instructing quietly, keep your ranks tight. Anticipate, don't react. Her war is strategy, intellect, and precision. Then Ares lands like a thunderclap, blood-red plumes snapping, laughter echoing. He charges without planning, raw and intoxicating. Glory! He roars, and mortals lose themselves to frenzy. Historians argue whether Athena and Ares represent two halves of the same impulse, wisdom and aggression, inseparable in war. You drift between them. One army fights with drilled precision, the other rages like a storm. Ground trembles. Athena raises her spear, and the tide shifts. Order advancing in harmony. Ares screams in delight, even in defeat, he lives for the battle's pulse. When dust settles, both sides pray. Victory and defeat belong equally to Olympus. On the mountain, Apollo watches, golden bow slung. He represents war's aftermath, healing and plague, music and silence. Gods temper their justice oddly, mortal logic rarely applies, the scene shifts to temple courtyards. Statues of Athena and Ares stand side by side, offerings at their feet. Olive oil lamps flicker beneath the goddess's calm gaze, crimson wine splashes before the god of bloodlust. Priests move like diplomats at a divine summit. In Sparta, boys train from childhood in hunger, pain, and fear. Society molds warriors, yet speaks of honor and duty, concepts Athena would approve. Every army prays to both, every warrior carries both inside. In Athens, Athena reigns through cleverness, marble gleams, debate and persuasion shape politics. The tongue is sharper than the spear, says an orator, and Athena smiles faintly. The gods' rivalry simmers. Ares storms Olympus, complaining mortals love Athena more. Hermes quips, laughter echoing across the clouds. Greeks humanized their gods deeply, they reflected human contradiction. Xenophanes once said, if horses could paint gods, they would look like horses. Perhaps humans did the same. Ares and Athena, instincts personified, myths endure. In the Trojan War, Ares fights for Troy, Athena aids Greece. Spears clash, ichor spills. Athena knocks him down, Ares appeals to Zeus. You're my son, Ares, but unbearable, Zeus sighs. Even gods have family drama, over Troy's ruin centuries later, grass grows among bones, sea murmurs against stones. Athena's owl watches. Ares' spear gleams faintly. War never leaves humanity, it changes shape. Scholars debate whether Athena's victory symbolizes civilization taming barbarism. Both gods whisper through the ages, one guiding thought, the other fury. Mortals still cannot decide which to follow. Above Olympus, Athena sharpens her spear, Ares paces, restless. They may never agree, but together they keep the world in motion. Without conflict, no growth, without reason, no restraint, you drift through starlit clouds, half amused, half thoughtful. Below, soldiers march, generals plan, poets sing. Athena guides the pen, Ares sharpens the blade. Wisdom and passion continue their battle, not on bronze fields. But within every human mind, you feel Olympus shift, less thunder, more perfume. Roses and saltwater scent the air, clouds blush pink. Aphrodite has entered the story, born from sea foam, she is so beautiful that even the wind hesitates. The Ori clothe her in gold and lead her to Olympus. From that moment, love, lust, jealousy, and vanity gain divine form. She glides, leaving flowers in her wake, her laughter sounds like waves, her anger sinks fleets. Mortals crumble, gods argue, empires rise and fall at her whim. You drift beside her as she admires herself in a bronze mirror. It's not my fault they fall in love, she murmurs. Hera rolls her eyes. Marriage and desire rarely coexist peacefully. Historians debate whether Aphrodite was influenced by Near Eastern goddesses like Ishtar, explaining her contradictions, lover and manipulator, comfort and chaos. Take Paris, he judges Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Power, wisdom, or the love of Helen. He chooses Aphrodite, and 1,000 ships later, the Trojan War begins. Not my fault, she says, watching Troy burn. Beauty unchecked can destroy, her gift is irresistible charm, her curse the same, her softer side appears in her son, Eros, mischievous Cupid. Shooting mortals and gods alike. Even Zeus wakes smitten, Hades tempted to poetry. Put the bow down, Aphrodite sighs. He never does, at Hephaestus's forge, sparks fly. Her husband, limping and patient, endures her affair with Ares. When Hephaestus traps them in a golden net, the court laughs, Ares fumes, Aphrodite smirks. Greeks turn the scandal into a lesson, creation, destruction, and desire are inseparable, Aphrodite's worship spreads. In Cyprus, sailors pray, in Corinth, temples become centers of ritualized love. Rural festivals float honey cakes on the sea, carrying secret wishes, a tender touch for a goddess of chaos, her influence threads through every story, Helen and Paris. Medea and Jason, even Zeus. She shapes mortal imagination, every song, heartbreak, and painting echoes her. Sometimes she creates, Pygmalion statue comes to life as Galatea, a rare moment when love brings life, not destruction. Aphrodite is no simple romantic. She is attraction itself, driving art, war, and folly. Without her, the world would be calm, rational, and dull. As night falls, you float beside her. The sea glows, foam rising like sighs. Love isn't supposed to make sense. That's what makes it divine, she murmurs. Then she vanishes into mist, leaving salt and rose behind. You exhale, smiling. She is right, the world, for all its heartbreak, would be poorer without her mischief. The night lingers after Aphrodite's perfume fades. Stars sharpen, dawn seeps upward like watercolor, and above the mortal world, two gods share the horizon, Apollo and Artemis, twin lights of order and mystery, of sound and silence. Apollo claims the day, his golden chariot rising steadily. Artemis guards the night, silver bow gleaming under the moon. Born of Leto, who fled Hera's wrath to Delos, they are opposites and mirrors, discipline and instinct, logic and intuition, fire and frost. He learns music, prophecy, healing, she learns hunting, solitude, vengeance. Light needs its shadow, you follow Apollo first. His temples, Delphi, Delos, Claros, echo with hymns and lyres. He is order, medicine, poetry, truth. But insult him, and plagues follow. Scholars debate whether he absorbed the sun god role from Helios, yet he embodies clarity, self-control, and occasional terrifying wrath. You see him chasing Daphne, who rejects him. Her river god father turns her into a laurel tree, Apollo declares her leaves will crown heroes forever. Meanwhile, Artemis moves silently through forests, nymphs at her side, enforcing her code, no marriage, no trespassers. When Actaeon sees her bathing, she transforms him into a stag, his own hounds kill him. She teaches boundaries and respect, despite solitude, Artemis is loved, towns light lamps to her before childbirth, hunters whisper her name for protection. At Delphi, their spheres overlap. Some myths say they alternate ruling it, balancing sun and moon, order and intuition. Rural festivals in Boron honor Artemis with bear costumes, civilization playing at wilderness. Apollo establishes the Pythian Games, temples filled with logic, music, and debate. Artemis would laugh at the neatness. Rarely they fight, but when they do, mortals hide. Niobe mocked Leto, and the twins killed her children, a harsh lesson in divine balance, yet their duet is beautiful. Apollo's sunlight warms, Artemis's moonlight cools. He teaches reason, she reminds humans to feel. Together, they prevent existence from tipping too far. Above Delos, the birthplace glimmers like a pearl. Shrines are half buried, but the air hums faintly. Apollo's light, Artemis's shadow, they never left. They are metaphors for daily balance, ambition and peace, curiosity and restraint. A breeze stirs, carrying lyre and arrow, and the world hangs perfectly balanced, half day, half night, clarity and dream intertwined. The world slows now, sunlight softens into gold, the air thick with ripened wheat and the smell of crushed grapes. You drift over a landscape transformed by season and song, where two gods rule opposite corners of mortal appetite. On one side stands Demeter, calm and earthbound, goddess of the harvest. On the other sways Dionysus, radiant and reckless, god of wine, madness, and rebirth. Between them, mortals learn what it means to live in cycles, planting, growing, celebrating, losing, and returning. You start with Demeter. She's not as dramatic as Zeus or as flamboyant as Aphrodite. But she's vital in that quiet, unassuming way that keeps the world turning. She's the mother of all nourishment, the one who makes barley bend heavy and fruit trees blush. Her temples aren't perched on mountains but built near fields, close enough for farmers to see her blessings firsthand. You glide down to Eleusis, near Athens, where her most sacred mystery plays out. Thousands gather, holding torches that flicker against the dusk, reenacting the story of her grief, the abduction of her daughter, Persephone, by Hades. You remember that myth from earlier, but now you see its full power. It isn't just tragedy, It's theology in motion. Persephone eats 6 pomegranate seeds in the underworld, binding her to both worlds. Half the year she reigns beside Hades, the other half she returns to her mother, bringing spring in her footsteps. Demeter's joy revives the earth, her sorrow brings winter's stillness. Historians still argue whether this story predates Greek religion itself. A remnant of older agricultural rites about death and renewal. Either way, it's hauntingly human, the divine echo of every parent who's ever had to let go. As you drift through the flickering light of Eleusis, you hear the secret hymns, soft, rhythmic, hypnotic. They promise initiates not just good harvests but hope beyond death, a continuity of soul mirrored in the turning seasons. For the Greeks, that was enough immortality. Now you follow the sound of laughter, wild, contagious, and absolutely unbothered by solemnity. Dionysus has arrived. His processions are the opposite of Eleusinian order, drums pounding, flutes shrieking, followers dancing barefoot through vineyards. They wear ivy crowns and spill wine like rain. Some sing, some weep, some simply stare at the stars as if remembering something ancient and wordless. If Demeter represents stability, Dionysus is liberation, the unraveling of reason in favor of raw feeling. His worship is chaotic, but not meaningless. The Greeks saw in him the necessary release that keeps society sane. You can't always be an Athenian philosopher, after all, sometimes you need to dance until you forget your name. A fringe tidbit for your sleepy mind: in certain mountain rituals, Dionysian devotees, mostly women called Maenads, would enter ecstatic states, claiming to see the god himself among them. They'd shake branches, sing ancient hymns, and sometimes tear apart small animals in symbolic acts of life's ferocity. Modern historians still debate whether that part was literal or exaggerated by scandalized playwrights. Either way, the point was transcendence, becoming one with nature's wild pulse. Dionysus himself is a paradox. Though he's a god of intoxication, he's also about clarity, the kind that comes only when masks drop. That's why he's credited with inspiring Greek theater, especially tragedy. In Athens, actors wore masks, embodying gods and mortals, love and doom, before thousands of spectators. The stage became a sacred vineyard, where humanity could confront itself without flinching. Demeter's rituals comfort, Dionysus's disrupt. But both remind mortals of the same truth: life depends on surrendering to cycles. You sow and reap, feast and fast, grieve and laugh. And through it all, the gods hover nearby, silent but approving. At one point, you drift over a symposium in full swing, men reclining on couches, debating philosophy between cups of dark wine. A student slurs, is Dionysus the god of wisdom or madness? His teacher, eyes heavy-lidded, answers, both. Because they are the same thing. If you go far enough. Somewhere in the shadows, Dionysus chuckles, refilling their cups without being seen. Back on Olympus, Demeter and Dionysus occasionally cross paths, usually during harvest festivals. She rolls her eyes at his vine-stained robes. You call that cultivation? She sighs. He grins. You call yours fun? And yet, they depend on each other. Her grain feeds the body, his wine feeds the spirit. Together, they ensure mortals never forget how to live and feel. You pause to watch mortals celebrating both gods at once, torches weaving through golden fields, dancers circling barrels of new wine. The music is slow, hypnotic, ancient. Every motion tells the same story: things end, and begin, and end again. One philosopher, perhaps a little too tipsy, gazes up at the stars and says, maybe the gods just reflect what we need most: reason when we're wild, abandon when we're rigid. You smile. That's probably the closest anyone's come to understanding them. As night deepens, the music fades, and the vines rustle in the soft wind. You can almost taste the blend of earth and fruit on your tongue, sweet and faintly bitter. Somewhere in the distance, Demeter's fields gleam pale gold, while Dionysus's revelers drift home, laughter echoing like the tail end of a dream. The gods rest now, or at least pretend to. The world breathes between their rhythms. In the hush, you feel the pulse of something older than worship, that strange human need to give meaning to joy, to loss, to the space between them. You drift higher, the landscape shrinking below, grain fields, vineyards, small fires glowing like constellations on earth. Two deities, two sides of the same truth. Demeter teaches endurance, Dionysus teaches release. You realize, as the stars take you again, that maybe balance isn't about stillness at all, it's about movement, gentle and eternal. Between holding on and letting go, the air cools again as you drift upward through the clouds, leaving vineyards and fields behind. The scent of grapes fades into salt, the wind of the open sea. The horizon widens, endless and blue. This is Poseidon's realm, and even half asleep, you sense it doesn't obey mortal rules. You peer down and see him rise from the foam, tall and broad-shouldered, beard dripping with seawater, eyes storm-glass gray. His trident gleams like a lightning bolt. Every movement ripples across oceans, nudging currents, tossing waves, stirring the deep where ancient things dream. Poseidon, god of the sea, earthquakes, and horses, one moment a protector of sailors, the next leveling cities. Historians debate whether his dual nature reflects maritime fears or older fertility symbolism. Either way, he is not to be trifled with. You glide along his domain. Below swim creatures mortals can only imagine, giant squids, sea serpents, shimmering schools of fish. Ancient sailors sometimes poured wine into the ocean as offerings to calm the waves. Perhaps he appreciated it. Perhaps the sea's roar was just him burping contentedly. The god's mood shifts like tides. Calm seas bring flourishing ports, his anger destroys. You recall Troy, where he smashed city walls over a grudge. Divine labor disputes, indeed. A nearby Athenian ship prays nervously as clouds gather. Poseidon's trident stirs the waves. One sailor drops to his knees, clutching a driftwood figurine. The storm stills for a heartbeat, then one more wave reminds them who rules. Horses, his second favorite creation, gallop across water, mane flying like spray. Myths say he made the first to impress Demeter, then fell for his own creation, a god torn between land and sea. Below, his palace gleams in coral and gold, guarded by nereids and dolphins. Amphitrite, his queen, glides beside him, balancing his temper. She sighs at his rants about mortals. You quake too easily, she says, literally and emotionally. Poseidon is also a builder. Cities like Corinth and Athens sought his favor for harbors. Athens nearly became his city, until Athena offered the olive tree over his saltwater spring. He sulked for centuries. As you glide through his waters, you feel his presence everywhere, the trembling seabed, the hush before waves break, the creak of anchored ships. Some see in him the stormy part of the human soul. Deep below, a trench yawns, ancient and mysterious, perhaps something Poseidon guards, or fears. The current pulls you upward, you break the surface. The horizon burns orange as the sun sets, waves glinting like molten glass. Sailors called him Earthshaker, not just for quakes and storms, but for moods that shake hearts. At last the sea quiets, wind dropping to a sigh. You float, stars blinking above. Poseidon's laughter rolls like distant thunder, not cruel, just powerful, amused by mortals daring to sail his domain. The water rocks gently, carrying the pulse of tides that have guided ships and myths for millennia. As moonlight silvered the sea, you close your eyes. Tonight the god sleeps, waves whispering lullabies, and horses gallop over an endless blue plain. You wake to the scent of ashes and cedar smoke. The waves are gone, replaced by mountain air thin enough to make your chest ache. The wind hums like a string instrument, and ahead, a blackened ridge cuts the sky in two. This is the domain of Hephaestus, the god of fire, forge, and all things built by hand. He doesn't live in marble halls or vine-covered groves. His workshop is buried deep beneath volcanoes, places mortals whisper about when the ground rumbles underfoot. You step toward the glow spilling from a crack in the earth, and it's like peering into the heart of creation itself. Hephaestus isn't what you'd expect from an Olympian. Lame from birth, thrown from the heavens by either Hera or Zeus, depending on which version you hear. He's the odd god out. Yet he's also the one who makes the gods' weapons, their thrones, their jewelry, their very homes. Historians still argue whether his limp symbolizes an ancient shamanic tradition of wounded craftsmen or was simply poetic irony, the flawed creator shaping perfection. You descend into the forge. Sparks burst around you like fireflies gone mad. The sound of hammers echoes through vast chambers, and molten metal oozes in glowing rivers. It smells of iron, sweat, and something strangely comforting, like hard work distilled into scent. You see Hephaestus hunched over an anvil, massive hands guiding a pair of bronze automatons that move with eerie grace. That's your quirky tidbit for this section. Hephaestus was the first roboticist. Myths describe his automatons, self-moving machines made of gold that served wine, guarded doors, and even walked and talked. Historians still argue whether this reflects ancient dreams of mechanical life or allegories for enslaved labor in aristocratic households. Either way, the idea of divine robotics feels oddly modern, doesn't it? You watch as Hephaestus wipes his brow with a soot-stained rag. He doesn't notice you, he's too focused. He dips a glowing blade into water, and steam curls like spirits fleeing into the air. That sword, you realize, might end up in the hands of a hero like Achilles or Theseus. Every great tale needs a weapon, and every weapon needs a maker. Despite his rough exterior, Hephaestus is gentle with his creations. He polishes them tenderly, muttering small compliments, like a parent soothing a child. When he crafts armor for Achilles, the shield alone becomes a universe, etched with stars, cities, oceans, even the seasons. The idea that an object could contain all of existence feels oddly comforting. Maybe it's Hephaestus's way of giving order to chaos, metal to myth. The god's marriage, though, is pure chaos. Hera arranged for him to wed Aphrodite, hoping beauty and craftsmanship would balance each other out. Spoiler, they didn't. Aphrodite loved drama, Hephaestus loved solitude. Her affair with Ares, god of war, became Olympus's favorite soap opera. When Hephaestus caught them, he built a delicate net of unbreakable chains and trapped them mid-embrace for every god to see. Awkward breakfast on Mount Olympus after that one, probably. You drift around his forge, watching new creations come to life, a golden throne that traps whoever sits upon it, a necklace that brings both beauty and ruin, a fleet of metal bulls that breathe fire. Hephaestus's art blurs the line between wonder and danger. His touch imbues beauty with consequence, as if reminding the gods that perfection always costs something. One scholarly theory says Hephaestus represents the earliest Greek respect for craftsmanship. Blacksmiths were both feared and revered, working close to divine fire. Their forges, like volcanoes, could create or destroy. That same duality hums in the gods' every breath. You sense it in the way the air trembles around him, creation and ruin, side by side, inseparable. You move closer, heat prickling your skin. He's shaping something new, a delicate circlet that glows faintly blue. His hammer rises and falls with a rhythm steady enough to calm you, like a heart slowing before sleep. You realize he's singing, low and hoarse, a workman's chant lost to time. Each verse seems to fuse the metal smoother, as though the song itself carries power. Everything breaks, he murmurs to himself. The trick is to make it beautiful first. Outside, you can see the volcano breathing, a column of fire reaching skyward, painting the night red. Mortals below think it's anger, punishment, maybe even war. But you know better now. It's just Hephaestus opening the flues, venting a little creative frustration. As you watch, the scene shifts. Hephaestus presents a freshly made throne to Zeus. The king of the gods nods in approval, never quite meeting his son's eyes. You feel the tension, respect, guilt, pride, all tangled up in molten silence. For a god cast out, being allowed back among the Olympians must sting like hot metal cooled too fast. Still, Hephaestus never quits. Every god who mocks him eventually needs him. His work keeps Olympus running, literally. Without his hinges, armor, and lightning rods, the place would probably collapse under its own divine weight. You get the sense he knows that, too, and maybe that's revenge enough. Another hammer strike. Sparks bloom around you again, tiny suns fading before they fall. Each one feels like a heartbeat, warm and fleeting. You remember Demeter's fields, Dionysus's revels, Poseidon's waves, and realize all of them depend on creation as much as destruction. Hephaestus's fire connects them all, it cooks grain, hardens metal, and lights the stars. You glance at your reflection in the molten pool beside him. It shimmers, fractured and golden. For a second, you look like one of his automatons, flawed but still shining. Maybe that's the secret of this god, the beauty of imperfection, the art of endurance. When you rise from the forge, the night outside feels cold but alive. Behind you, Hephaestus keeps working, hammer ringing in time with your heartbeat. Each strike fades softer, slower, until it's indistinguishable from the sound of the wind. You climb toward the mountain's rim, and as you step into moonlight, the volcano exhales one last plume of smoke, a sigh, almost tender. You can smell iron and ash on your skin, but beneath it all, something else, purpose. The kind that hums quietly. Even in sleep, the mountain air thins into mist, and you find yourself gliding downward again, past blackened rock, through drifting clouds, until the ground softens beneath you. The scent of salt fades into something wilder, cypress, myrrh, and the faint tang of fire. The sky here feels heavier, tinged with dusk even when the sun shines. This is Artemis's territory, where wild things still belong to themselves. You step quietly, because everything here listens. The undergrowth trembles with unseen motion, foxes, hares, maybe even nymphs peering from the shadows. In the distance, hooves crunch softly against stone. Artemis appears like moonlight condensed into form, silver tunic, bow slung across her back, a quiver full of arrows that hum faintly as if alive. Her hair gleams pale gold, her eyes bright with alertness. You can tell immediately, she doesn't like intruders. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, wilderness, and young women, is one of the few Olympians who never married, never compromised. She moves between gentleness and ferocity like a tide, nurturing newborn creatures one moment and striking down hunters who dare to boast the next. She's the paradox of nature itself, beauty with teeth. You follow her as she moves through her forest. She barely touches the ground. Each step feels ritualistic, a silent hymn to motion and restraint. Somewhere above, an owl calls. She nods slightly, acknowledging it like a subordinate reporting in. You realize this place is alive in ways the polished temples of Olympus never are. Your mainstream historical fact here: some scholars believe Artemis's worship predates the Greek pantheon entirely, tracing her origins to earlier Anatolian or Minoan mother goddess figures. Her temple at Ephesus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was so massive that later invaders, including Alexander the Great, treated it as sacred even after Greece's decline. She's been around, evolving through names, faces, and myths, but always guarding what's untamed. You step into a clearing bathed in moonlight. Artemis raises her bow, string taut, gaze fixed. The forest stills. You follow her line of sight and see a stag, magnificent, antlers glinting like gold. She waits. The moment stretches, thin as silk, until finally she lowers her weapon. "Not tonight," she murmurs. The animal bows its head slightly, then vanishes into the brush. That restraint is what separates Artemis from the mortals who try to imitate her. There's a story about one such mortal, Actaeon, a hunter who stumbled upon her bathing in a sacred spring. He saw what no mortal was meant to see, divinity unguarded. Furious, Artemis turned him into a stag, and his own hounds tore him apart. Brutal, yes, but there's a poetic symmetry in it, curiosity punished by reflection. Historians still argue whether the myth warns against voyeurism, pride, or the male intrusion into feminine power. Maybe all three. A quirky tidbit: in some local cults, young girls preparing for adulthood would serve as little bears in Artemis's temples, performing dances meant to tame wild instincts. It's a charmingly strange ritual, half coming-of-age ceremony, half symbolic wilderness training. Scholars still debate whether it had ties to actual animal totems or if it was just the ancient version of summer camp with more divine supervision. You watch as Artemis kneels beside a stream, washing her hands. The water glows faintly under her touch. She doesn't speak, but you can feel her thoughts, a blend of pride, solitude, and a loneliness so old it's turned serene. Being eternal means outliving everything you protect. She senses you watching and finally looks up. Even gods can't control what they love, she says softly, voice like silver bells muffled in fog. We can only guard it until it chooses to leave. Then she smiles, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. You realize that's why she never joined the politics of Olympus. She doesn't crave worship or power. She just is. As she stands, her twin brother Apollo steps from the opposite side of the clearing, golden where she is pale. They're opposites, but in balance: sun and moon, music and silence, order and instinct. He grins. You've scared half the hunters off the mountain again. She shrugs. Then the other half should take the hint. Their banter feels centuries old, worn smooth by affection. Apollo strums his lyre, a tune light as breeze. The forest responds, leaves rustle, crickets join in, even the air hums in harmony. She's the breath, he says, nodding toward his sister, and I'm the heartbeat. You smile, because that's exactly how it feels, their energies feeding each other, keeping the world in rhythm. As the night deepens, the twins walk side by side through the woods, their steps creating a faint shimmer on the ground, like dew forming midair. You follow at a respectful distance. Somewhere nearby, wolves howl, not in fear but acknowledgement. You think about how rare that kind of equilibrium is: wildness and wisdom, passion and patience. The forest grows quieter now, settling into stillness. Artemis glances back once, eyes soft. Sleep lightly, she whispers. The world moves while you dream. Then she's gone, fading into the trees, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the faint glint of moonlight on her discarded arrowhead. You linger a moment longer. The air feels sacred here, not holy in the temple sense, but ancient, raw, unfiltered. Every breath carries the weight of centuries, of myths told by campfires and whispered under crescent moons. As you lie back on the cool grass, you can almost hear the heartbeat of the forest, steady, patient, alive. The stars above look different here, sharper somehow, as if Artemis herself polished them between hunts. You feel a strange comfort knowing that, somewhere out there, she's still walking beneath the trees, keeping watch over the wild parts of the world that refuse to be tamed. The wind sighs once, gentle as a lullaby. You close your eyes. If sleep is a kind of wilderness, then Artemis is its guardian too, protecting the fragile creatures that wander in and out of dreams. The forest air fades into dawnlight, pale gold creeping over the horizon as you rise once more, drifting toward a world quieter, colder, more shadowed than Olympus. The scent changes: no flowers, no wine, no sea spray. Just stone, smoke, and something ancient. You've reached the underworld, the realm of Hades, the last of the great Olympian brothers, and perhaps the most misunderstood. You expect darkness, but what greets you first is structure. Columns of black marble, rivers that glow faintly silver, and a vast, echoing silence that hums with unseen life. It's not hellfire or torment, it's order. Everything here moves with a measured pace: shades crossing bridges, ferrymen steering boats, spirits murmuring faintly as if in polite conversation. You step onto the bank of the Styx, that mythical river binding both gods and men. Its surface gleams like oil, reflecting stars that don't exist in the sky above. A solitary figure rose toward you, Sharon, hooded and skeletal, his eyes dim embers. He doesn't speak, he just holds out a hand, waiting. You check your pockets out of habit and, of course, have no coin. He studies you for a moment, then nods once, letting you pass anyway. Maybe he's feeling generous tonight. Across the Styx, the underworld stretches in layers. The Elysian fields glow faintly gold in the distance, where heroes rest in perpetual peace. Tartarus yawns below, deep as imagination allows. Most souls wander the grey meadows of asphodel, neither punished nor rewarded, just existing. Historians still argue whether this moral neutrality reflects early Greek fatalism or a more nuanced view of existence after death. Either way, it's hauntingly human. Then, from the shadows, Hades himself appears. He isn't skeletal or monstrous, he's regal, calm, his black robes edged in faint starlight. His presence doesn't chill, it steadies. You sense immediately that he's less a villain than a custodian. Someone has to mind the ledgers, keep the cycle running. Hades' domain isn't evil, it's balance. Without death, the living would choke the world. Without endings, beginnings lose meaning. The Greeks understood this, even if later myths painted him darker. You watch as he walks through his halls, nodding at spirits who bow in silent respect. He pauses at a flickering torch, adjusting its flame with the care of a librarian dusting old manuscripts. There's affection in his precision, a quirky tidbit. Ancient Greeks rarely worshipped Hades directly. He had no grand temples, only shrines discreetly tucked away. Saying his name aloud was considered risky, so people called him Platon, meaning the wealthy one, because beneath the earth lay all treasures, gems, metals, seeds. Death, they realized, is also the source of renewal. You catch sight of Persephone, radiant even here. Her gown shimmering like sunlight through autumn leaves. She moves gracefully between shadow and bloom, her presence the underworld's pulse. Every few months, she returns above ground, bringing spring in her wake. Hades watches her go each time, his expression unreadable, love and loss intertwined. Historians still argue whether her myth symbolizes agriculture, marriage, or the inevitability of change. You suspect it's all of them. In one corner, you glimpse the judges of the dead, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus, debating over a newly arrived soul. They murmur, gesture, then nod in unison. The soul bows and drifts away, satisfied. You can't hear their verdict, but somehow it doesn't matter. Down here, fairness is the final law. You wander deeper, where rivers of fire and forgetfulness converge. One flows with the memories of the living, every laugh, every lie, every fleeting kindness. Another carries oblivion itself. Souls drink from Lethe to forget, preparing for rebirth. You lean close to the water and catch your reflection, not as you are, but as you might have been, or might yet be. The thought is dizzying. Hades joins you, silent for a while. Then he says, almost gently, everything you see above owes me thanks. The roots feed on what falls. He gestures upward, and through the cavern roof, you glimpse faint outlines of trees, their roots glowing faintly as they drink from the soil of his realm. Life and death, intimately entwined. He smiles faintly, tired but not bitter. They fear me, he says. But they forget that I'm the reason they get to be reborn. You realize, with a quiet sort of awe, that Hades isn't the end. He's the turning point. There's movement nearby, a shadowy figure sneaking toward the gates. You recognize Orpheus, clutching his lyre, eyes wild with hope. He's here for his beloved Eurydice. You remember how that story ends. His music softens Hades' heart, wins permission to lead her out, but he glances back too soon. One look, and she's lost forever. Even gods have limits to mercy. You can almost hear the faint echo of his song, notes so tender they make the stones weep. Hades closes his eyes briefly, as if hearing it too. He loved her truly, he murmurs, but love isn't stronger than trust. He turns away before the moment can deepen. You suspect he feels it more than he admits. In another hall, you pass through a chamber of shadows where faint voices whisper names. You realize these are the forgotten dead, those with no one left above to remember them. Yet they're not angry, just quiet, patient. Each name still exists somewhere in the dust, kept safe by this meticulous god. A fringe belief from ancient Orphic cults claimed that initiates could escape the cycle of death entirely by living purely and remembering secret verses. Scholars still debate whether that idea was metaphorical or a proto-mystical rebellion against Hades's dominion. You like to think he didn't mind. After all, even rules need the occasional loophole. You drift toward the great gates, twin doors of obsidian flanked by Cerberus, the three-headed hound. His eyes glow faint red, but his tail wags faintly when Hades passes. You scratch one of his ears before realizing that's probably a terrible idea, but the dog just leans into it, rumbling like distant thunder. Above, the faintest glimmer of sunlight pierces the gloom, signaling the boundary between worlds. You feel a gentle tug upward, like gravity in reverse. Hades watches you rise. Remember, he says quietly, there's peace in endings too. The underworld shrinks beneath you, its glow dimming until it looks less like a prison and more like the roots of a vast, luminous tree. You understand now what the Greeks meant when they said life and death were two halves of one circle. You drift upward, weightless, carrying the hush of that realm with you. A calm that feels final but strangely hopeful. The air grows warmer. You sense the mortal world returning, bright and noisy and flawed. You can almost hear the gods above stirring again, unaware that beneath them, the keeper of eternity hums softly, keeping the will turning. When you surface from the underworld, it feels like waking from a long, lucid dream. The air rushes back, warm and full of scent, wet soil, crushed herbs, and the faint musk of rain. Above you stretches the open sky, impossibly wide after so much shadow. You blink, realizing that the journey through Greece's divine labyrinth has almost reached its quiet end. You float now over a landscape that seems half real, half memory. Mountains gleam like hammered bronze. Olive trees twist in the wind, their leaves flashing silver. The Aegean murmurs below, blue as the lapis gems once laid on ancient tombs. You've wandered from the heights of Olympus to the depths of Hades's halls, from the drunken chaos of Dionysus to the gentle hearth of Hestia. And still, there's one last echo to follow, the fading song of the gods themselves, because the truth is, the age of the gods did end. Slowly, subtly, not with thunderbolts or cataclysm, but with silence. As human minds grew curious, rational, skeptical, the old myths began to shift from worship to story. Temples crumbled, their marble repurposed for new cities. Priests gave way to philosophers. The gods retreated, not destroyed, but folded into language, art, and metaphor. And yet, as you drift through this twilight of myth, you realize something important. They never truly left. Take Zeus, for instance. His lightning lives on in every surge of power, every human who believes their will alone can shape the world. Athena's wisdom glimmers in reasoned debate, in courtroom logic, in the scientist's careful hand. Aphrodite still walks through every fleeting glance, every ache of love. Every poem written under moonlight. Apollo hums through every song, Hermes through every message sent across invisible airwaves. Even Hades, silent as ever, stands at the edge of every goodbye. You pass through the ruins of a temple now, perhaps Delphi, where once the oracle's voice rose in riddles. The columns are cracked, ivy-twined, but the air still hums faintly with her prophecy. The ancients believed that when Apollo spoke through her, mortals could glimpse the divine for a heartbeat. You pause and wonder, perhaps every act of imagination is a form of prophecy, too, a whisper from what's left of Olympus inside us. The wind carries fragments of prayers once spoken here. Grant me strength. Grant me love. Grant me meaning, they rise and fall like waves, timeless, borderless. The words could belong to anyone, in any century. You wander onward through the fragments of Greek time, past amphorae buried in dust, coins stamped with fading faces, the broken base of a statue that once held a god's gaze. Each piece hums faintly, like memory itself vibrating under the weight of years. Then you find something unexpected, a small votive offering, still intact. It's a simple clay tablet, inscribed with just one word, epsilon chi alpha rho iota sigma tau alpha, gratitude. You trace it gently, and for a moment, all the noise of history fades, because that's what the Greeks gave the world, not just myths, but a way of seeing. They looked at chaos and found meaning. They looked at suffering and found beauty. They looked at the unknown and dared to name it divine. Even now, in the modern hum of cities, in the glow of electric light, the old stories breathe between moments. When people speak of fate, they echo the Moirai, the weavers of destiny. When they speak of hubris, they recall Icarus, falling through the sky. When they seek courage, they think of Odysseus, sailing home through storms. The gods became metaphors, but metaphors became immortal. As the world around you fades into dusk, you glimpse them one last time, figures silhouetted against the horizon. Zeus, older and quieter, watching from his throne of cloud. Athena beside him, her owl circling once before perching on her shoulder. Poseidon resting his trident across his knees, eyes on the distant sea. Artemis turning toward the moon, bow in hand. Dionysus laughing softly in the shadows, and behind them all, Hestia tending her small, steady flame. The same flame that flickers now in every home, every heart. Every story retold, they watch you for a moment, and in that gaze, you sense approval. You've walked their world, listened to their quarrels, seen their flaws, and still, found reverence in the chaos. That, perhaps, is the greatest offering of all. The wind rises, soft and full of memory. You close your eyes and let it carry you, weightless, across centuries. You think of how history dulls the divine but never quite erases it. Maybe gods die when forgotten, but maybe remembering, even once, is enough to bring them back for a heartbeat. The last sound you hear is the rustle of olive leaves, whispering like pages turning. You realize it's the world itself breathing, a quiet, endless rhythm. Life, death, rebirth. Mortals come and go, myths rise and fade, yet the stories remain. As sleep folds over you like twilight, the voices of ancient Greece linger in the hush, not commanding, not divine, just human, beautifully, impossibly human, and you understand, at last, that boring history was never boring at all. It was simply a long lullaby, soft, rhythmic, meant to soothe, so you breathe once, deeply. The stars overhead drift into their constellations, Orion, Andromeda, Perseus, and countless others. Each one a god, a story, a whisper across time. You feel yourself sinking slowly into the quiet, the myths fade, the marble dissolves, and what's left is peace. The final line echoes, low and steady, as the last god's voice turns to wind. Sleep, mortal. Even dreams are part of the story.